So we've got a shocking case coming out of Texas where 5 faculty members of a Midland Christian School have been arrested for allegedly covering up a sexual assault of a student. Now, the incident reportedly occurred during the school's baseball practice. And here is essentially some details that we know coming out of the Independent. So 3 teachers and 2 coaches of Midland Christian School were charged with failure to report with intent to conceal neglect or abuse, police said. The accused have been identified as superintendent Jared Lee, school principal Dana Ellis, vice principal Matthew Counts, athletic director Greg McClendon, and head baseball coach Barry Russell. And we have a photo of these individuals. If you want to go ahead and take a look there. There they are, all of those essentially individuals who've been charged with taking care of children. They have all been arrested. And further from the Independent, we also know that the assault took place on January 20th at the Christensen Stadium during a baseball practice. The survivor, whose identity was undisclosed as he is a minor, told a forensic interviewer that he was in a locker room at the stadium to change when the lights were turned off. Another student reportedly told him that it was freshman initiation day before someone began to hit him. He was being hit when he was pushed to the ground and was being screamed at. He attempted to hit his attacker, but was told he was not allowed to hit back. The survivor stated he was then sexually assaulted with a bat. Those are absolutely shocking details. And we do know that when the school principal, Dana Ellis, was informed that the superintendent essentially let them know about the incident in January, the superintendent tells the vice president and the athletic director to look into the case. But then on February 14th, the superintendent told the police that he would not turn over the documents about the incident. And he also reportedly refused to answer further questions by phone. Now, also per the Independent, a search warrant was later served and authorities were able to obtain documents concerning the investigation. Police, however, stated that the documents had only been created a few days before. It was determined during the investigation that the 5 school faculty members involved failed to report the sexual assault as required by Texas's family code, according to authorities. And the emails also obtained by Midland PD, well, they really demonstrate that the school administrators refused to report the abuse to the authorities, which they were required to do so under statute. Also, the unarmed minor that's accused of actually committing the sexual assault here has also been arrested. As to the administrators themselves, well, jail records indicate that all of the faculty members left the Midland County Jail Wednesday on personal recognizance bonds, meaning all they had to do was essentially give their words that they're gonna come back and show up for future court dates. Cenk, how does it sit with you?
Yeah, well, not well. And so let's talk about why the administrators might have covered this up. I've got 2 potential reasons. One is connected parents, like the parents, the people who were part of the abuse, know these administrators, something along those lines. Because usually it's like a wink and a nod on these are the good guys in the community, and the one that's being picked on, they're outsiders, we don't like them. So just look away. So that's one potential explanation here, and I'm doing this in a general way. The details of this case are not yet clear. The second possibility is one that you see in a lot of these cases, tradition. So they say, well, hazing is part of our tradition here. So if you can't, so they, sexually assaulted him with a bat. That's our tradition here. And so I don't know why, anybody would be opposed to that. We're conservatives, we're gonna fight for that tradition. Well, some traditions suck, and you shouldn't fight for them, and you should get rid of them. But nope. All traditions are awesome, even if they involve sexual assault. Well, that's just not true. And so I'm glad they're busted. I hope that they never do this again. And Adrian, there's always these horror stories of hazing, and generally speaking, they're true. I'm sure there's some outlandish ones and apocryphal ones. But overall, yeah, a lot of groups, fraternities, football teams, other sporting teams love to do hazing, and those hazing rituals are gross, they're assaults, they're usually done for, anyway, they claim they're super manly, and then they're almost always involve some sort of attack that involves one man doing something sexual to another man while pretending to be super masculine, and that's the good old boys doing it the way they always have. So I hope they get the full force of the law thrown at them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, these school administrators, the athletic director, they were all charged with protecting these kids. And while they may not have been in that situation to be able to help them immediately in that moment, the individual still could have conducted a thorough investigation and reported it as they're supposed to under the law. Again, they're supposed to be protecting them. And I agree with you in terms of kind of getting the sense that this potentially is this cover up, but it also definitely reflects on the community itself. The thought that you could have an incident like this happen, and so many people are willing to risk their livelihoods and their freedom to cover it up really speaks to the fact that this is probably something that might be in some ways ingrained in this community. These displays of power and domination that really look to subjugate a child. That's pretty gross and actually really sickening.
Yeah, the law is supposed to protect us all. And when it is applied unevenly, it encourages vigilante justice. Because if it was your kid that got sexually assaulted in this way, you would be tempted to grab a bat at a minimum and go and find whoever thought it was no big deal, etc. And we don't want that. We don't want that. That's why the law has to work. And by the way, to be fair, in this case, the law is looking into it, so that's good, okay? So last thing is, Adrian, this happened to me on my high school football team, not this particular story, obviously, but hazing, right? And they said, okay, and I remember the seniors said something, okay, we're gonna take the sophomores, because in our high school, the sophomores were the lowest class, and we're gonna do something gross, right? And I was one of the sophomores, and I simply said, who do I have to fight? Because I'm not doing that, okay? And they got into a conversation. I said, look, you could pick Zambrowski, you could pick the other guy, you could pick the biggest lineman you have. I would much prefer to have that fight than I would to go through your stupid ritual that's demeaning and humiliating, etc. Right? And after they had a little get together, and they're like, who should fight Cenk? And then it got weird and awkward, and then everybody left. Okay, but that's unusual, right? And that's why you need administrators to step in and protect all the kids and not the ones with parents you like.
Absolutely. And the fact that you can't tell me this wasn't the first incident that's ever happened. Like, I'm sure whoever the coach is, they created a culture that would allow this and enable this. And you can kind of tell who has these kind of dominance problems and tries to essentially exploit other people and embarrass them and gets their jollies from that. So part of me's like, don't act like you don't know who these kids were. They should not have been left alone. You also know who the kid is who gets beat up and mistreated. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, some of these people definitely need to lose their jobs, if not spend a few days, little months in some cells. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, and last thing, guys, remember that this isn't, hey, we're judging them for not being in that locker room and not stopping it. And you could have a good argument that the coach should have known, etc. They covered it up after it happened. So they were trying to make sure that kid and his parents and his family never got justice. That's gross and totally unacceptable. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.